Hello cyber warriors. Allow me to share a story with you. Once upon a time there was a man named Lon, who was moving into a new apartment. He went all day without Wi-Fi and could not stand it any longer. Lon decided it was time to hook up his router to the internet. So, he did just that. The moment he established a connection to the internet, he started getting caught up on all of the important and historical events that have taken place in his absence. Without configuring anything with his router, he insecurely browsed the web and left himself vulnerable to attacks. At this very moment, a masked man appeared outside Lane's apartment complex carrying a laptop. The masked man began searching for wireless networks with default SSID names. He located a strong wireless signal coming from a nearby window, so he began exploiting the network with his suite of cyber offense tools. Lane was unaware of what was happening because he was so wrapped up in important stuff. Before Lane could even think, he was hacked. Ha ha. Ha ha ha.
Skyla, did you make up that story?
No.
Well, that's an oddly specific story considering what I'm teaching today.
It sounds like the perfect segue into your educational video.
Fine. Today, we're securing our home routers. So we're setting up home routers. Maybe you're going to be configuring the router or modem that your internet service provider gave you, or ISP, or maybe you went and bought something similar to this TP-Link that I found on Amazon for $50. The settings might look slightly different depending on the make, model, manufacturer, device that you picked up, but the settings that we're looking at are not going to be specific to one device, so it should be applicable to just about any router that you can find out there on the market. So you guys ready? Let's go ahead and get started. Once you unbox your router, let's go ahead and flip this bad boy over and either annotate or take a picture of the credentials that are on the bottom of it, because we're going to need this to get into the router and make changes to the settings. After you do that, let's go ahead and feed it some power. Hey, so just so that I don't confuse anyone out there, if you bought a separate device similar to the one that I have right here and you plan on running it off of the original router or modem that your ISP provided you, you need to make sure that you grab an Ethernet cable. These are usually included with the purchase of your routers, and you need to plug one end into the LAN out on your ISP router or modem, and you need to plug the other end into the WAN in port on your new router. So now you get to choose if you want to connect via Wi-Fi or a Ethernet cable to this router so that we can start setting it up. I'm going to use Wi-Fi, but in Ethernet is just as easy. So I'm going to go to my network settings right here, Wi-Fi. TP-Link provides a little Wi-Fi info card, so I know that the SSID of this router is TP-Link 0F40. You can also see that there's the 5 gigahertz radio right here. Let's just click on the 2.4, click connect. And remember, if you're going to use a Ethernet connection, you need to make sure that your computer is in the same network as your router. Okay, and it looks like we are connected. So now you can open up an internet browser of your choice, and we're going to navigate to the gateway IP address, which is really just another fancy word for your router. It's usually 192.168.1.1 or sometimes 0.1. If you want to know for sure what it is, all you have to do is open up either Command Prompt or PowerShell. All right, let's move this over here, and I'm going to type ipconfig. Now, don't freak out. I have several different Ethernet and wireless connections on my computer, but this right here is the wireless LAN adapter. This is my main Wi-Fi adapter for the PC over here in my server rack, and it's saying that my default gateway is 192.168.0.1. So let's copy that. Let's put that up here in our browser. All right, looks like we're opening the page, and there we go. We have the first page in our new TP-Link router. All right, so it wants us to create an admin password so that we can start managing it. Remember, we want to create a nice complex password. We do not want to reuse the password that's on the Wi-Fi card or on the bottom of your router, because anyone can flip that over and look at it if it's in an insecure location. So let's type in something, and let's get started. All right, looks like we're going through the quick setup phase. So the time zone, let's go ahead and synchronize this so that we don't have any mismatch issues. So Eastern time for me. I'm gonna click next. So it's asking for the connection type, and it also says if you're not sure, you can auto detect. So I would say for probably 99% of home users, it's going to be a dynamic IP address, which means you're going to get whatever your ISP shoves your way. A static IP address, y'all would know if you had a static IP because your internet service provider would tell you, hey, this is your IP address, and it wouldn't change unless requested. These other options refer to VPN and other stuff, so let's hit dynamic IP and hit next. This is referring to the MAC address. So similar to what I just said about the IP address, if there's a specific MAC address where your ISP says, hey, only your computer can connect to the internet, that's when you would clone your computer's MAC address. But that's, again, probably not going to be the case for a majority of users out there. So do not clone MAC address. Let's hit next. We're in wireless settings. So Smart Connect, you can see that when it's enabled, it's going to kind of like merge the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz of radio channels, so the Wi-Fi signal, rather than you having to connect to the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz when you want faster speeds or you're further away. If you have Smart Connect enabled, they're kind of together and your device can bounce back and forth between them to get the fastest speeds. It looks like we can also change our network name and password from here, so let's do this right now. I am going to label mine Hack Me, and you guys will know more about this later on in future videos. And the password, how about we go with password? I'm going to leave it like this because, again, in this example, my router is not connected to the internet. It's just going to be a local area connection so that I can go through the settings with you all. But right here, let's get a nice beefy complex password in there so that others can't brute force their way into your Wi-Fi network. So I'm going to hit next. And here's a summary of everything that we just changed. I'm going to click save. So you need to remember, we just changed the SSID of our Wi-Fi. We also changed the password of it. That means that we need to connect to our new network that we just created. So let's go back down here to our wireless settings. And let's find Hack Me. There it is. I'm going to click connect. The password I just entered was password. Okay, and it looks like we're connected. Now, again, don't freak out when it says no internet. My router right here is not connected to the internet because I'm just going through the settings with you all. So it's not important for me to be connected. So we're just going to go ahead and move on. And let's refresh this web page. My gateway IP address stayed the same, but again, you can pull up the command prompt and you can run that command one more time by hitting the up arrow, hitting enter, and if your default gateway changed, then you could just find it from here. So we're going to exit out of that. Okay, we are in the GUI, the graphical user interface of our new router. Isn't it cool? All right, so now that we're in here, let's go to the advanced tab. And the very first thing that you should do is find your, in here it says system tools for TP-Link, but just go to your system or administration. What we want to do is check for firmware. If there's not an upgrade, then just disregard this. If there is, pull that upgrade, let it reboot and do its thing, and then come back in here and start where you left off. So now that the firmware is out of the way, what we're going to do is start going through the list one by one. So starting with the tab labeled status, this is going to give you the status of your router. So it's going to show you what's connected. It's going to show you what LAN network you're in, and it's going to show the clients that have been connected. The GUI might look a little bit different depending on the make and model of your router, but it should give you, roughly the same statistics. All right, so now we're going to skip network and operation mode because there's really not much in here that we need to adjust right now. What we want to get into is wireless. So let's start with wireless settings. Okay, so Smart Connect is that thing I was telling you about earlier where both of the radio channels, the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz channels, are going to kind of be merged, and they're going to be seen as one channel for your device to connect to. It gets a little more nerdy than that, but your device is going to be able to connect back and forth between them to get the best experience possible. So the first setting that I recommend that we enable is hiding your SSID. Why? Because when someone walks by your place or drives by and they have their Wi-Fi settings open on their laptop, computer, phone, whatever, your network is not going to be visible to them, or it'll be hidden. The next thing we want to do is, you can see it says security right here, WPA/WPA2 personal recommended, and then here's WPA2 enterprise. What I want you all to do is choose the highest level of security possible. Do not use WEP, do not use WPA, use WPA2. The highest level of security you can. If you have WPA3, that's even better. Go ahead and get that puppy enabled, because that's going to give you a lot more security. Now, the version of the wireless protected is going to be WPA PSK or WPA2 PSK. We're going to go with WPA2. That is the version that we want. Now, the encryption, we're going to choose AES. Now, I imagine if I left it at auto, it would probably choose the highest security setting for me, but we want to make sure that we do that on our own. AES should be paired with WPA2 because it's the higher or the better encryption standard when compared to TKIP. And then transmit power. For the most part, I leave my power at high, but if you are in a small location and you don't need to be broadcasting, 100 feet outside your window, you might as well lower your transmit power. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get lower speeds. It just means that it's going to concentrate the location of where your SSID is broadcasted. So now we're in the WPS section. This is called Wi-Fi protected setup. Disable that. Get rid of it as soon as you can. Now it says your WPS function is disabled. I know that under system tools and system parameters, there is an option down here for WPS. See where it says enabled? I don't like how they hid that all the way back here. Let's go ahead and uncheck that and click save. WPS has so many security flaws, it's not even funny. I think for just about any use case, people should be disabling it. All right, so that's it for wireless. I already know that these three other sections don't have anything really useful in there. So let's go to the next tab. So this is guest network. I just want you all to remember that the number one thing that we can do to lock down our systems is to disable all necessary services. If you do not need a guest network, don't have it. But here's what I will say. Don't bring guests onto your own primary network. We don't know what kind of malware infected devices they're bringing into your home or your office location, wherever you're setting up your router. So for this tutorial, let's go ahead and enable a guest network. So we're just going to name it guest. You can even hide the SSID, and we might as well just bring it up to par with the same, encryption and security standards as our main network. So you can see here, WPA2, AES, and then again, you want to create a nice strong password. I'm just making an easy one for this tutorial. You're going to click save. When you do not have guests over, all you have to do is uncheck this box. When you are going to have guests over, just enable it. So with the guest network created, let's now take a look at these settings right above it. You can see here, allow guests to see each other and allow guests to access my local network. I would always leave these unchecked. I would never want these enabled, but there's a scenario where you might. Do you have a Google Cast device, for example? If you are, having some kind of event or a party or something, and people are like, oh, hey, I want to share my playlist, or hey, I want to cast something to your screen. Well, you could temporarily say, hey, I'll allow guests to access my local network. Now, what you're doing is you're allowing them to communicate with your secured devices in the network that you created. So you need to do this on a case-by-case basis. But the minute they leave and you're not casting or anything like that anymore, go ahead and disable that function and then save it to your router's configs. All right, so that covers the guest network. Let's move on to USB settings. So USB settings, device settings, there's really nothing here. Sharing access. What I would prefer is to have an option where you can't share anything, but it doesn't look like it's letting us do that. So share settings right here. Okay, so it's asking for a network or media server name and how you want to be able to connect to it. Guys, unless you are setting up a media server, do not do this. If you are only setting up this router so that you can browse the internet, let's disable these functions, okay? So network neighborhood, FTP, let's disable that. And the share all, Let's go ahead and toggle that off. Again, all we're doing is disabling all unnecessary services. And you might even get better performance from your router when you start disabling this stuff. All right, and that wraps up USB settings. I'm not gonna go over parental controls. If it's something you wanna know in the future, you can comment down below, but most routers do a pretty good job of walking you through what each setting does. Quality, there's really nothing here. What we wanna get to is security. Security settings. First off, this firewall, we want to enable that. That is what is going to protect you. Keep that enabled. Now, DOS, denial of service protection, is something we want to enable. So it's saying that DOS protection and traffic statistics must be enabled at the same time. So go down here, traffic statistics, and I'm going to enable that. And now I'm going to go back up into security settings. And now we can enable that. So denial of service is going to give you an extra layer of protection from people flooding your network with like bad requests. So what we can do is start enabling all of these. Now you can choose high, but I'm going to choose low on all three of these, and I'll tell you why. My router can't handle that kind of bandwidth. It would severely degrade its performance, and I might see as much of a 50% decrease in network speed. So low is still going to give me some comfort knowing that I have a level of protection, but if I leave it at high, I just don't want to go down to 50% of my speeds or more. So now if we take a look at the two settings below, it says ignore ping packet from WAN port. Let's go ahead and enable that. This is basically going to put your router into stealth mode. If a hacker was pinging your router from the WAN port, which is the IP address that your ISP gave you, it's basically just not going to echo back and say, hey, I'm here. That doesn't mean that they cannot hack you or they cannot find you. This is just an additional layer of security that you can put on for free. All right, and that is it for security settings. I'm going to click save. Now we can skip these next four tabs: NAT forwarding, IPv6, VPN server, Smart Life Assistant. I've already gone through these and they're not going to be applicable to majority of people out there. So you can just go through your router yourself, or if you have questions, you can always ping me down in the comment section below and I can help you out. So now we want to go down to system tools. We already set up most items under the section, but let's go into the administration tab and toggle the button that allows for local management. So right here, so this remote management, oh, it looks like it was disabled by default. We do not want to enable remote management. Majority of the time, if you're ever going to administer your router, you're going to be right there on that network, the one in your house, the one in your office. So, we don't need to add an additional attack vector for, cyber hackers to take advantage of. So let's just go ahead and disable that. Local management via HTTPS, I would like to enable that. That means up here in the browser where it says not secure, if we have this enabled, what we're going to be doing is adding HTTPS. That means you're going to have a secure browsing session. So we can keep that enabled. Access for all LAN connected devices. I would probably go ahead and disable this from a security standpoint. That means that any device that you connect hardwire into the back of your router will be able to access the management user face, the one that we're in right now. Now you can see that because I've already connected before we have this disabled, my router has already recognized my MAC address and the description, which I didn't type in and did that for me. And that means that my computer, this one right over here, will always be able to connect to my router until I either delete this entry or this is toggled again. All right, now I'm gonna click save. All right, and the last thing I recommend we do is we go to backup and restore and we click this little backup button right here. When you're done configuring and everything, go ahead and make a backup of your settings and put it somewhere safe, because if you ever have to replace your router and you get your new one that's the same make and model, you can just throw this file right back up in there using this restore button here, and your router's gonna pull all the same settings you just had and you can be up and running in less than 5 minutes. I've done it myself with the Verizon router that's sitting up here on my server rack. I replaced it, threw that file right back in there, and I was up and running in like 2 or 3 minutes. So It's really easy, and I go ahead and recommend you doing that. Just make sure you keep it in a safe location, okay? All right, good job to every single one of you that just got done securing your home network. Just remember, the best way to combat cyber threats is by changing default credentials and by disabling all unnecessary services. That's all we did. So if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and you can show your support to my channel by subscribing and sharing my videos on social media. So thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good night, everybody.